I want to talk about the comment that I get at least once a week on this channel. Sonny, I don't want to raise worms unless they're native. Non-native worms are invasive. And look, I get it, that instinct is correct. Being thoughtful about what you introduce into your environment is genuinely good science. But this particular conclusion, well, I gotta push back on it a little bit. And I think it's causing people to miss out on one of the most powerful tools in regenerative gardening. And I'd like to apologize to my worldwide viewers up front because this video is going to be very US centric, but hopefully the concepts in this video also apply to where you live. So today, as someone who has spent years with his hands in worm bins and his nose in peer-reviewed research, I'm going to break this down for you, scientifically, clearly, once and for all. So let's start with some definitions because language really matters here. A native species is one that evolved in a specific region over thousands or millions of years. It has relationships with the local soil, plants, fungi, and other organisms that develop together. That coevolution matters. Now, a non-native species, also called introduced or exotic, is simply one that ended up somewhere outside its original range, usually through human activity. Non-native just means wasn't here originally. An invasive species is something much more specific. According to the USDA, an invasive species is one that is non-native and whose introduction causes, or is likely to cause, economic harm, environmental harm, or harm to human health. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Most of the United States, specifically everything glaciated during the last ice age, that's essentially everything north of roughly the Ohio River and the Pacific Northwest, has no native earthworms at all. The glaciers, they just wipe them out completely. The worms that are in your Midwestern or Northeastern garden today, they are European species. They arrived with colonial settlers in ship ballasts and soil transported with plants. They've been here for about 400 years. So when someone tells me that they only want to raise native worms in Ohio or Minnesota or even here in Colorado, I have to take a deep breath. There are no native worms to raise here. The ecological baseline was reset a millennia ago. Now, and I want to be very clear about this, there is a real invasive earthworm story in North America. It's not in your raised beds, it's in the forests. Old growth forests in the upper Midwest, places like Minnesota and Wisconsin, developed over thousands of years without any earthworms at all. The forest floor built up a deep layer of duff. That's the spongy, slowly decomposing organic matter that acts like a nursery for native wildflowers, ferns, and tree seedlings. When European earthworms move into these systems, often carried by anglers dumping unused fishing bait, they eat through that duff layer extremely rapidly. Decades of carbon storage, habitat, and seed banks can be consumed in a matter of years. Native wildflowers, well, they just can't regenerate, and the entire soil ecology collapses. So the concern is real, but it's habitat specific. The scenario where non-native worms become genuinely invasive is in undisturbed old growth forest ecosystems that never had worms, not in your backyard garden. Your vegetable garden, your raised bed, your compost pile, these are already disturbed agricultural or horticultural environments. The worm ecology question there, well, that's completely different. So let's talk about what worms actually do, because this is why I care so much. Eisenia fetida, those are the red wigglers, are the gold standard for vermicomposting. They are native to Europe. In your worm bin, in your compost pile, in managed garden beds, they are biological processing machines. They convert organic waste into castings that are rich in plant-available nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and a whole diverse microbial community. We're talking about beneficial bacteria, fungi, protozoa, the biology that plants have been evolving to partner with for hundreds of millions of years. In garden soil, European species like Lumbricus terrestris, that's the common nightcrawler, are creating vertical burrows that act as drainage channels. They act as aeration pathways, and they act as highways for root growth. They're mixing organic matter through the soil profile, and they're stimulating mycorrhizal networks. None of that stops being valuable just because the worm's ancestors came from Europe. The microbiome that you build with intentionally managed non-native worms in a bin or in a garden bed is still functionally richer than soil without them. The chemistry doesn't care about biogeography. I want to put this into a perspective with an analogy that I think lands a little differently. Domestic cats, Felis catus. They are technically an invasive species in North America, every single one of them. They're descended from African wildcats and domesticated in the Near East. They are not native to this continent. And I'm going to be honest with you, free-roaming cats are genuinely one of the most ecologically destructive invasive species in the United States. Studies estimate that they kill between 1.3 and 4 billion birds and up to 22 billion small mammals every year in the United States. That's not a small number. That's genuinely catastrophic for native wildlife. But here's the thing. We don't look at indoor cats kept responsibly by people who love them, and say this animal is invasive and harmful. Because that same species, in a managed context, confined to its appropriate environment, isn't causing ecological harm. It's a companion animal. The harm is context dependent. The species isn't inherently bad. That's exactly the worm situation. A red wiggler in an old-growth Minnesota forest where it doesn't belong, that's a problem worth caring about. A red wiggler in your managed worm bin or garden bed, processing your kitchen scraps and building your soil biology, that's just a very small, very helpful creature doing its job. The context is everything. Okay, so if it's not apparent, here's where I land on this. The instinct to think carefully about what you introduce to your environment is good science. Keep that instinct, but apply it with precision, because there are simple, practical things that you can do to make sure your worms stay beneficial and never become a problem. And none of them are complicated. First, if you're a fisherman, do not dump your leftover bait worms at the end of the day. Not in the forest, not near a stream, not on the trail. Take them home or feed them to your chickens. That is the single biggest vector for worm spread into old growth ecosystems. One bucket of leftover bait can seed an entire forest floor. Second, worms follow food. They will not migrate out of your garden and into the wilderness if there's nothing to eat out there. Keep your worm bin or your garden bed well stocked with organic matter. That's kitchen scraps, compost, leaf litter, and your worms will have zero reason to go anywhere. A well-fed worm is a stationary worm. Third, and this one surprises people, you want to check your boots. Worm cocoons are tiny, sticky, and incredibly resilient. If you've been working in your garden and then you go for a hike in a natural area, you can carry cocoons on the soles of your shoes without ever knowing it. Clean your gardening footwear before heading out into the forest or the wilderness. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it actually matters. Now, none of these are hard rules. They're just the kind of low-effort, high-impact habits that let you be a responsible worm farmer and a good steward of natural ecosystems at the same time. You don't have to choose one or the other. But also, don't let an oversimplified, non-native bad framework stop you from building one of the most effective, scientifically supported soil systems available to a home gardener, because that is exactly what vermicomposting is. Your red wigglers have been processing organic matter in managed systems for thousands of years. They're good at this. They want to help. And as always, science backs us up. Now, before you jump into the comments, I am fully aware that there is a truly invasive worm species here in North America, the Asian jumping worm, that is causing destruction wherever it is found. That's just not what this video was about, so if you'd like for me to touch on that subject in a future video, then comment that below. I'm Sunny from Sunnyside Soil. If this helped clear up things, then subscribe, share it with the person who asked you this question, and check the description for links to the research that I cited today. Thanks for watching.